So one of the 14-point metrics is invalid dates. What does that mean? An invalid date is a date that's in the future that's marked as 100% complete, or it's a date in the past that is not complete. Why these are important is because we built logic into our schedule. And when those dates are invalid, the logic is lost. And the ability for the schedule to flow and be dynamic is lost. It's all about the dependencies that we have created. If a task that's in the future is done, all those tasks that were linked to it to say they happen after this one's done, they're still waiting for that future date to happen. So they can't happen. So the dynamic part of it that we want is that when you shift a date and it is completed early, mark that date accurately before you mark it complete, and then it allows all those successors to pull in with it. Now you can easily predict what the whole project is going to finish with. Same with dates in the past. And I know this is a contentious subject, is if you don't know what the new date is, you just keep it in the past and say that it's incomplete. But again, the successors that are linked to that task are saying that they're happening now, but that's not the case. So then you're going to have a rolling ball issue of all these late tasks that say they're supposed to be happening right now, and you're just compounding the issue of all these late tasks just because of that one task in the past that's not 100% complete. My recommendation to you is when a date is in the past and the person that's in charge of that task doesn't know what the new date is, move it by a week. Move it to this week, because you should be touching and updating your schedule on a weekly basis. So when that task comes again the next week, you're just going to move it a week at a time. That way you can show how it affects all the successor tasks that are after that, because that's what the DCMA 14 point is all about. It's indicating any problem areas and also making sure that your schedule is gearing towards success. If you have dates in the past, it's saying, hey, there's an alert there because you haven't updated those dates in the past, which means it's affecting all the successors of that task to say they should be starting when you know they aren't. So why report that false information? So my recommendation for that past events is to just update them in a week at a time. So it didn't happen last week, make it happen this week. Make it happen this week. That way the team that you're reporting to, they understand the implications of that slipped task, that, okay, you slipped that another week. Here's what it's doing to the rest of the tasks that follow it.
So a recap on invalid dates. This metric is looking at tasks that have 100%, but yet their finish date is in the future, and past tasks that are still incomplete. So why is this important? One, how can you complete a task that's in the future? That is not possible. That's why it's invalid. It means you took credit for a task that was in the future before pulling the date in. So you've got to remember that your dates in your start and finish are promise dates. So yes, you might have taken credit for a task in the future, but you need to pull that date into what it really was before you mark it 100% complete. Because then once you mark it 100% complete, it's going to mark the actual finish and actual start is in the future, what your current promise date is. And then also past dates. You've got to remember that your start and finish are promise dates. So if you still have a task that is in the past, yes, that was what your promise date was, but it's still not complete, then you need to update the new promise date as best you can. This metric is going to look at all those dates to say, that's not possible. You're promising me a date in the past, or you're saying you completed something in the future. That's what makes it invalid. The fields used to calculate this, there's quite a few. You're going to look at your early starts, your early finish, your actual start, and your actual finish. And how you calculate this, it's a little bit more complex. You're going to sum the count of how many incomplete tasks have early starts that are in the past. And then you're also going to do early finishes that are in the past. And then you're going to have actual starts in the future and actual finishes in the future. Once you add those all together, you're going to divide it by the count of incomplete tasks. This metric has 0% tolerance. So you want to get down to as close to 0 and eventually be 0. So in this example, we're going to look at those early starts and early finishes. So an early start means that early start field is less than or greater than the status date of the schedule. And then the actual start needs to be NA. So here you can see where we're looking at this early starts and the dates that they have, and then the actual starts. And you see those NAs, but then you compare it to the status date of your schedule. So see that status date up there is November 7th. That's what you're comparing it to. So in our example, we have 1. It just means that early start of 10/12 is less than 11/7, but yet the actual start is NA, which means it hasn't started. The next one is looking at the early finish. Same thing as the early starts and actual starts, is that the early start is less than the status date of the schedule, but then the actual finish is also NA. And so in this example, we're 0. The next part is looking at the tasks that have actual starts that are in the future. So an example of this is looking at that 2/7. There is a task that is down there from February 7th, but our status date is November 7th of 23. So that's 3 months out in the future. So that's our one task that we're going to calculate. Then the other is having actual finishes, that 2 of them, actual finishes that are in the future. So your actual finish has to be greater than the status date of the schedule. So in this example, we have 2. So this metric is looking at the total amount of tasks that you have, not just the incomplete. Because again, this metric is looking at the completion. So we're looking at the total number. So in this example, we have 473 total tasks. And out of that, we have 4 that are invalid. So we're going to do that 4 divided by 473, and that's where you get the 0.85. Again, the goal is to get down to 0, where you have no invalid dates. So you need to correct them. If there's a task that did start or finish in the future, unmark it as 100% complete, or even if it's just an actual start, it doesn't have to be 100%. It can have just at least some percentage on it. Mark it back to 0 and correct the promise dates to be what they actually were, and then update the percent complete again. This will make them not invalid. So here's an example of invalid dates. We have these dates that are in the past and they're not complete. You can see the actual finish column is not populated. So any successors say they're happening right now. So we haven't finalized the flooring of the material. So we didn't order it and it's not in process. So it's saying that these other tasks either should be done or this one should be in progress, and it's not. So this is where you need to update the finish date to be accurate. Another example would be with framing. So this task is ongoing. It's not scheduled to be done until October 2nd, but what if I went ahead and marked it 100% now? That actual finish is in the future. And so that is what causes an invalid date, because now what all is waiting on it? You can see all these successors. We say that we can purchase the windows, we can finalize the roofing material, we can put the electrical lines and the plumbing lines in the walls. All those tasks are waiting on that finish date. So you can see they still say that the finish date is 10/2, so they're not starting until 10/3. But if you really did get framing done and ahead of schedule, that's where you need to update the date, the finish date, to be accurate of when it actually did. So that way the successors can start on time. That's the whole point of it, is you want to have a dynamic model, and it can't be if you're putting bad data in it. So update those dates before you mark it as 100%, or keep those past dates accurate and forecasting in the future, and then you won't have any invalid dates. So a recap on the invalid dates metrics. You're going to be looking at any task that's in the future that's 100% complete, and any task in the past that is not 100% complete. Because again, you built that logic, and if you're marking tasks in the future as 100%, it's throwing off that logic. Anything that is a successor to that task is waiting for that future date to occur, when actually, if you would have changed the date to when it actually did get finished before you marked it 100% complete, it would have allowed all those successors to pull in. And then vice versa, if you have something in the past that's not 100% complete, if you're sitting there waiting, it's assuming that all these successors are currently starting. But if it really isn't complete, you need to update that finish date to where it is, that it's somewhere either today or in the future, so that way all the successors can move. Because again, you just want a dynamic forecasting model, and it won't work if you have these invalid dates. DCMA does not allow any of these, so you want to make sure and be looking at your schedule and eliminate all of these. It just goes into best practice of making sure you are accurately portraying the promised dates, and if you got anything done soon, you're accurately portraying the actual finish dates.